Welcome to the show, folks. Greg Sheldon here, your host. Before we get into anything, subscribe and follow the show, which will make everybody really happy, including you, because all the times that you're wondering about what's going on in the industry, um, you can tune in to us. But really, this show's not about me or followers or anything. It's about the guest. The guest is Joseph Gama. And let me tell you, I've known these guys for a while. And at first, I wasn't certain, but I really got to know Joseph and I got to listening to him. And this guy is a natural leader. And he amazes me every time we talk and he gets it. And we'll find out why in the episode of why he gets it. And it really hits home and it's really a touching story. And it's just a great American story. And I want all the success in the world for them, and they're on their way to that. They're just improving that culture they already have, and really invigorating that authorship in the company. And it's just so exciting to see. And also, what's interesting is that he's not all about technology; he's about mindset, and mindset is key. Technology is just a tool, but this analog technology is where it's at. So. God bless you. And I really hope you enjoy the episode as much as I did, because I learned so much about Joseph and I thought I knew a lot already. So, anyhow, without any further delay, Joseph Gama.
Greg Sheldon here, your host of Metal, Steel, Manufacturing, and Business Pro podcast, where you learn everything about the metals and manufacturing industry that make your modern day life possible.
So, Joseph, thank you very much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And Texas is a place that I tried to get to not so long ago, and I had some challenges at the border. But I really, there's something about Texas to me that is like that's where the American dream starts. And everybody knows here on the podcast that listens knows that I'm not from the United States, but the United States to me, the entrepreneurial spirit has always been a soft spot for me, and a lot of that's lacking here in Canada, and it's always nice to see when families start a business, especially in this industry, right? And carry it on for a long time. So everybody, welcome to the show. We've got Joseph Gama of Boro Park Manufacturing from Houston, Texas, and Joseph and I have worked together for about 6-7 months, and I'm always amazed by Joseph and his leadership and willing to take the reins in the company that he took over. And I mean, you still work with your mother on it, right? But I mean, your dad ran it for so many years, and we just want to get a clearer picture of where it's at today, because I believe in it and I believe in you, and this is about spreading about spreading that word to the community, which is the United States, but also Houston, right? So
sure.
What's the story, man? Tell me, what is the story of Boro Park, and why did it start, and how were you involved in that?
So I was a kid. My parents were from New York, and being from New York, my father got tired of shoveling snow. So he was in the relocation business at the time, got sent down to Houston. Was also in banking and doing different things. And, someone walked into the bank one day and talked to him and says, what are you doing here? You don't need to come work for me. You need to be running your own business. And so he bought a little machine shop back in 1984, roughly. And when the oil crunch came through, wiped everything out. They basically had nothing, and then they started again from scratch, talked to all of his vendors and said, look, I know we filed for bankruptcy, but if you stick with me, I'll make sure that I get you guys all paid. And they continue to do that. And, I was a little kid. I was about 2-3 years old at the time. And so they grew a business. He had 2 guys that were partnered with him, Mike and Ronnie, in addition to my mom. So the 4 of them kind of slowly built this thing up to where it is today. We got a 26,000 square foot facility, and everything we've done has been word of mouth. It had always been my dream to work with my father in any aspect that I could. So whether it be real estate acquisitions or different things on that level, he wouldn't let me come work for him when I graduated college. So I said, Dad, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to graduate. He says, nope. He says, go out into the real world, get yourself a job. And I'm like, what? But I want to come work for you. He said, absolutely not. Go get the experience, go out there, go see what's out there in the marketplace. And then when the time is ready, I'll let you know. So I went out and I had a job in mortgage, refinancing mortgages and stuff. And then I went out and had a job in customer service inside sales for a integrated products company. And, eventually got laid off from both because the industries had turned. And my father looks at me and says, okay, I think you're ready. And then he started teaching me the basics of the finance and the back end stuff that he used to do. And, it's from, the accounting to payroll to employee personnel to different things. And slowly, I don't want to say that he was grooming me for this position, but he was. At some point in time, he turned around and says, okay, you're ready. I'm out of here. I said, where are you going? Says, your mother and I are going on a trip. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And they traveled the world together. While I ran everything back over here. Now we do have, a shop foreman who took care of all the manufacturing side while I handled all the financial and the business side. And that's pretty much the story of kind of how I came into play. About 7 years ago, he passed away of pancreatic cancer, and it was a challenge to find my way. It was one of those things where my wings were there, but I didn't know how to fly, and it took me a while to get my feet underneath me and figure things out and find my own way and path. And eventually led me here with you, Greg, as we're doing this podcast together.
Cool, man. Well, that is a hell of a story. And, I know your dad's proud. And I'm always curious. I ask this a lot, like, what is the one thing that you learned from your dad in that whole process?
My father was a people person, and watching him be able to conduct a conversation, carry on, and it was more about you as a person. He wanted to know more. He wanted to know about your personal life, your background, and he was the kind of man who was genuine. And so those are the things that you look at and say, wow, Dad, you really taught me a lot on the back end that I never paid attention to until, when you start putting those skills to work, it's like, wow, my father had left a big impression, bigger than I ever thought. And those are some of the things that I will always cherish. And for me, it was also working side by side with him, sitting down, him teaching me and going through whatever it was, whether we were fixing a sink faucet or doing things to a car or anything in particular. It was always him and I were joined at the hip in that regard. Um, and being able to kind of have that mentorship was pretty big. A lot of them are very invaluable experiences.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. That's special. Um, yeah, you're fortunate to have had that, right? And
Yes, very.
yeah, I'm glad for that. And I see that in you. I haven't known you all your life, but I've known you for a while now. And that I see that in you. And it's always great to have others like that, take us under our wing, but are willing to push us out when we need it, you know?
Mhm.
So
Tough
um
love.
yeah, that's what they call it. Yeah, tough
Yeah,
love. And that's how we learn, right? So
correct.
cool, man. But I mean, your dad passed away, and that's always unfortunate. And but I'm sure that was a scary moment too. And where you have a vision of where things are going, and I want to touch on that. Like, there's some things happening there at Boro Park that have been happening for a while, and I just want to get a sense of where you see things going, and how does your dad's influence impact that?
So, in regards to where we are going, there's a lot of things that we've never done as far as taking that initial step. It was always the fear of if we take this leap, then there's nothing going to be at the very bottom. You're going to fall into a pit and not be able to get out. So, part of the stuff that we're doing now is starting to increase our social media presence. We have a website. We never have, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We've never done any of those types of things before. And it's, all of our business has been word of mouth. That's how the business initially grew. You put a quality product out there, you're, oh, great. Hey, try this company for all your needs. And that's kind of how we started. And a lot of the businesses that we were with today were mom and pop shops. And we started to slowly grow with them and grow with them and take them to where they needed to be, as well as us growing.
Mhm.
And, it's not about being a customer for us. It's now being more personable and saying, okay, how can we help you grow and how can we grow with you? And I think those are some of the values and things that instilled, from my father's aspect
Mhm.
of saying, I'm just not going to treat you as another number, ticket line number. And you're going to be with us, and then how can we take care of you? Because you take care of us, we take care of you, and we grow together. And I think those are the changes that have been needed for a while. That we're starting to push into that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I see businesses, all of us, me included, have all lost touch sometimes with what business is about, which is people, right?
Right.
And it's refreshing to hear that, from, somebody in our industry. It's about the people. It's not just about cash and transactions. It's about more than that. It's about the relationship with your client. But it's also about more than that too. And I wanted to talk about your employees, and I mean that's since COVID, that's been a challenge, right? The whole industry knows that, so we're speaking to the choir here, right? But
Right.
I want to get a sense from you of where you see things going with your employees, and I know what it is, but nobody else knows, right? And I want them to hear that, what you believe in.
So one of the things about our employees is that our turnover is very low. We've had employees with us and still do for 20 plus years since this thing has been rocking and rolling when they were little, or when the company was a smaller little size.
Mhm.
And now that we've gotten to the size we are, they're still with us. And one of the things that we struggled with is leadership. Okay. And struggling with leadership, we need to figure out how we're going to get from point A to point B and who's going to take us that direction. And those are some of the things where now that I'm coming into play more so than I ever had before, guiding us into that direction of saying, okay, hop on the train, guys, I'm going to lead you here. And now we're opening up more to um not so much technology, but more so what's the efficient way, what's the best way, how are we going to be able to do things, and taking their opinion into account. Before it was a dictatorship and me saying, okay, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And now I'm able to express to them and talk to them and say, okay, is there a better way of doing something? How do we do this in that limelight and be able to move in that direction together and make them feel more valuable than just another employee number.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I think that's critical that you recognize that. And it is for all of us, and I had to learn that the hard way when I was in management. Was like, these guys and sometimes girls know a lot better than we do because they're in it every single day, right? So
Great.
why should we be dictating? We should be asking and saying, like, what do you think? And then that helps them see that you actually care, right? And then acting on that. So
Great.
yeah, appreciate that, man. Um, and they do too. It's not about
Right.
us, it's about them, it's about employees too, right? Um, I'm curious about I mean Israel is a pretty critical part of this whole thing, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk to, what Israel's brought to the table. I mean, everybody has brought something to the table, but Israel's kind of, I like Israel. I think
So
he's
we had a foreman by the name of Mike. He retired several years ago. He was also a business partner. He's one of the four partners. It
Mhm.
was my mom, my dad, which is Ray and Camille, and then Mike and Ronnie. Ronnie is still with us doing all of our quoting, and he's our um, backup to Israel. So if anything were to happen to Israel, Israel's out of town. Ronnie can run the operation and show. When Israel came on board, because Mike says, Joe, Camille, I'm tired. I'm ready to retire. We were looking for somebody. He came through, and one of the things that I expressed to Israel, I said, I want to grow. I want to grow as a company. I want to grow business. I want to to take this to the next level. And I think you're the guy to be able to do this for us. And since he's come on board, things have changed and we're updating things that, some of the processes were old school mentality. And because we've done things for a certain way so many years, the processes were there. It was great. Everything worked. But now we need to upgrade, and bringing the newer, younger, fresher, ideas to the table was a big aspect for us. Of course, in a corporation, in a company, that not everybody's big on change. But slowly, him and I, our views have to align. Okay, my direction has to align, and he has to be on board, and we have to back each other up, because that's where the company is going to head, in that direction, if we support each other. And that was the biggest thing. And one of the big things that we changed around here was cross training. Okay, none of our guys were really interested in learning a new skill set, trade set. And, we would approach them, what do you want to learn next? Okay. And they were taken back. What do you mean? I've been doing this for, 15, 20 years. You want me to do something different? It's up to you. If you want to learn a new skill or a trade skill, we'll teach you. And so that happened just recently. We had a young lady, she's still working for us. She was in welding, and she turned around and said, I want to learn how to run the brake. Talked to Israel. Israel said, I think that's a great idea. Him and I were on the same page. We have a gentleman by the name of Robert, who is a phenomenal teacher. And when I approached him he said, absolutely, I don't mind. She can even use my tools. And it was one of those things where he comes on board, he trains her to where she's at. Now she's running a brake press all by herself. So those are little things that we do in investing back into our employees. And, Israel is big onto saying, okay, if this person's out, who's going to fill in? And it's always been in the back of my head, but having the right personnel to be able to push that was big and huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he's taking the reins on that, and that's awesome.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. And so I'm curious what you think the biggest challenge is, like that cross training. Like, how do we overcome this change? Like the whole industry. I mean, it's not just our industry, it's all kinds of different industries where people don't want to change. Like, what do you think? Do you think there's like a reason why, and how can we get past it? Like, why don't people want to change?
Because I think they become complacent, set in their ways. I think they have, one thing that they visualize and they want to do, and that's it. And there's no getting around it. It's one of those where I'm a certain age and I've done this, every day. My father used to wake up every morning, have 2 eggs, a cup of coffee, and a slice of toast every day. Didn't matter. I was like, Dad, do you want something different? Nope. I'm having my eggs, I'm having my toast, I'm having my coffee. Occasionally throw in sausage or bacon, but other than that, it was the same routine every day. And it's you form a habit, you form a routine, and people are accustomed to that. And I think that's part of the breaking the mentality, breaking the image, breaking the molds, and newer ways this year. Not this year, but this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you said technology. It doesn't have to be technology, because some of the biggest changes I've seen don't necessarily come from the technology. It's more of a tool. What really changes is the mindset, right? And it's kind of like,
Right.
it starts once it kind of gets going, it starts to infect everybody, and that's where the change happens. So thank you for saying that. It's important for people to realize that, because a lot of times I focus on technology, but I've been wrong about that. It's about the people. It's about mindset,
And it's
so
about culture. Once you build the right culture and you bring the culture of your staff and your employees together, and there's a famous saying that you have, people like to be led. And without a leader, they can't be led.
yeah, exactly.
And it's time for people to kind of step up and understand that not everything is going to be given to you. Not everything is going to be at your disposal whenever you need it. But we're going to get there one way or another. And this is how we're going to go about doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And that is exactly it, man, is having a path to where you're going. And people want to be a part of a company where there's a leader, which is you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know where you're going, and they're gonna follow you, um, because you have clear direction, and people want that. Otherwise, they'd be running a business, right?
Correct.
So, um, so that's good. Um, so have you gotten any feedback from employees on, things that they're looking for improvement so far that, really is like, oh wow, I never expected that, or
There were a couple. We just recently did not a survey, but a questionnaire for some of our employees and put it out there.
yeah.
Um, they one of the things that struck me on one of these, um, they were asking to bring in customers more frequently, even our
Huh.
current customers, so they can actually see what we're doing and see as their job is in the manufacturing process to be able to say, wow, this is what we do and how we do it. That was one of the things. The other thing is obviously, everybody's going to have an opinion on certain things of how you're supposed to do things, so that's not
Of
an issue.
course.
But they want more. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking through it right now. Give me one second, Greg.
That's okay, man.
Uh,
No worries. Not putting you on the spot or anything. It just came to me.
they want to actually, what they want to do is they want to start producing higher quality products.
Oh
That
wow.
was the bigger thing that I came through, produce high quality products. And it's like, okay, wow, how are we not producing a high quality product? Are you seeing
Hmm.
these things through here? So one of the things that we've always done is, we have a QC personnel, and they look at things, and but I guess we're missing some stuff. Okay, so when we have to re-examine and review some of those things and say, okay, how do we fix these mistakes and problems type of scenario, and that's big for me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Wow, that's big too. That's big for everybody. I think that's really so that poses some questions too, and also some opportunities where you can go have these conversations now. It's a start point for a conversation instead of,
Right.
you know, how's your dog doing? It's like, okay, let's dig deeper on this thing. Let's have a deeper conversation, which creates that authorship, right? So that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that. Cool,
Yeah.
man. Um, all right. Well, we'll definitely have to look at that further. So I'm curious about, what is the biggest learning curve that you're going through? What has been that for the longest time for you? And then, more recently, what is?
I guess one of the biggest things is transparency. Okay, so when back in the, I'd say back in the day when my father was running this, everything about the financial side or everything about here was never disclosed to anybody. Okay, but how do you expect to grow if you don't know where you stand? If you don't know what your
Exactly.
costs are, if you don't know where, taking that into account as you're bidding on a job, how do you expand from there? Okay, and one of the things in talking to some employees, like, hey, this is where we are. And when they see us pushing 20, 30 cabinets out a month, or 80 cabinets to 120 cabinets, whatever the case might be, they turn around and say, wow, you're really, we're making a lot of money here. And it's like, guys, the transparency, the nature of the beast is
Mhm.
we're 6 to 8 weeks manufacturing. Okay, I got 150, $200,000 in just raw material costs that I'm carrying for those 6 to 8 weeks,
Mhm.
in addition to, you know, 45 days, 50 days by the time they pay me. So I got 4 or 5 months before they actually, before I see anything off of these things. And I think that opened up their eyes a little bit to realize and understand that, okay, even though I'm putting this product out here, there's a lot more to this on the back end that they don't see and understand.
Yeah,
And
you're
that
100.
doesn't include your electric, that doesn't include your water, your payroll, that's just material cost only.
Yeah,
That doesn't
exactly.
include your hardware that goes into it, and everything else. And so that's been the biggest challenge of being comfortable talking about this with the employees, and saying, okay, you know, this is where we are, not disclosing, huge financial numbers or any
Of
of that
course.
kind of information, but giving them a different perspective of saying, okay, this is the reason you're not making 60, $70 an hour type of scenario. This is everything is all laid out here in black and white. What questions do you have?
Yeah.
and being more personable with them on that level, even though I am, management, leadership, or whatever, to where they feel comfortable asking the question.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's like any relationship, right? I mean, as soon as you start being transparent and communicating, that gives the other side an opportunity to be that way too, right? And then they can understand that you're not making 100% of the money that you're selling it for, right? You're just making a
Right.
portion of that. And there's all these costs, and just that clarity, just trickles through the business, and then they feel like they're a part of something. Yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's been the biggest curve, is being comfortable talking about that with them and not having everything so hush hush and secretive, and keeping closed lid on things to where they don't know exactly what's going on.
yeah, yeah, I agree. That seems to be the world that we live in now, and that's
Hmm.
that's okay. I think it's actually better. But I'm familiar with that world because I grew up in the one where it was all secret and it was military style, right? Go do
Yeah.
this, go do that, and they call you a bunch of names in between. But the generation that we're leading, is not.
Correct.
They're softer, right? And that's okay, I guess. I don't see it changing anytime soon. So regardless of whether it's good, okay or not, we got to adapt.
We do.
So that's cool, man. All right. So some of your biggest clients, I mean, what is that? I mean, there's so much that has been learned, from clients that you have. I won't name any names, but like, what has been the biggest learning curve you've had with some of your clients that you could
Um,
put a
I
put your
think
finger
clear
on?
communication. One of them is clear communication. We have a client that, we build A, but they're expecting a combination of A, B, and C, and there's things that aren't, being, communicated by both parties. And it's that's been of a challenge.
Yeah.
And also I would say a little bit of the policies changing, if that makes sense. So when you've been doing something for so long one way, and now it's like we need to do this over here.
Right.
Okay, we have to figure out on our end how we're going to now change the way we do things. And that's in the manufacturing side, and saying, okay, these are the completed jobs. This is what we've done in the past. And now we need to adapt, and we need to change to a new drawing, a new, um, whatever the case might be, and be able to adapt and flexible.
Mm.
Flexibility is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if you could have, anything, I mean, of all the things in a business, and I don't mean money, I mean like to make your life and their life and their employees' life easier, what would it be? Like, is there any one thing you could think of?
Mm, I think the understanding of where everybody's coming from. Okay, one of the things that you don't realize is what makes you get out of work and come to work every day. Okay, what's your motivation? What's the drive behind the company and the force? And those are the big things that I would love to change, is being able to understand where all my employees come from, and also understand where our customer comes from, and saying, what's your driving force, and how are we going to meet in the middle and push this together?
Yeah. Cool, man. That's good. That's good. I wish more people were saying those kinds of things. Um, so what is the drive today? I mean, is it legacy? Is it, that I'm curious. I think it is, but that's just my assumption.
Well, most people are going to turn around and tell you money. They want money. They want the company to be profitable. Yes, that's an aspect of it. But for me, to continue on what my father, my mother, Mike and Ronnie, what they built,
Yeah.
and I'm the youngest of six, and there's no other siblings that wanted to join forces with in this, and they all did their own thing, which is great for them.
Mhm.
But on my aspect, it's continuing what my father built, and and um, we wouldn't have been here without Mike, Ronnie, the employees that we have, and that's the biggest thing. One of the biggest things, Greg, that you and I had talked about, when we first met, was like, what is the one thing that you want to do? Is like, I want to be able to give back to my employees. I want to be able to reward them for their hard work and getting us where we need to be. And that's always been a struggle for me. And so when you say continuing the legacy, absolutely. Continuing to be able to reward my employees, absolutely. That's my goal and objective at the end of the day. How do we make our place a better environment to work where people want to work? How do we generate, income? But I can also give back to them and say, hey, what job well done.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And then other things too, community stuff, right? That they all care about, and that all comes when we get to that place, right? So
Correct.
that's cool. What do you guys do exactly? Boro Park Manufacturing, I just want to make it clear. I know, obviously, but anybody
So
listening maybe isn't sure.
we are a sheet metal fabrication shop. So our specialty right now, we do a lot of aluminum enclosures. Aluminum is one of our specialties. And for you guys out there in the metal world or manufacturing world, it's a challenge to weld. It's not like you're welding steel or different things. So you kind of have a pretty good skill set for these things. And our welders are pretty skilled set at it. And speaking of welders, one of the welders, self-taught. He wanted to be a welder so bad he would take his lunch break, take 2 pieces of scrap metal, eventually weld and show it to Mike and say, nope, that's not good, you need to do this, and then he eventually taught himself. So when you look at it from that standpoint, it's just a matter of being able to manufacture what the customer wants, any type of sheet metal stuff. And whether we're bending parts, whether we're cutting parts, punching parts, putting them together, that's basically what we do.
Oh man. Well, would you share that story about, you had a talk with some of the guys in the night crew, and you don't need to name names. I'm just curious, how that whole thing went. I think it's a great story. I liked it. And would you be willing
Which
to
one?
well, the one where you're talking to the guys all night and there was a hug or
So
something.
yeah, so I was talking to I was just down in Houston recently, and I was talking to the night crew guys, and they were giving me a hand as we're putting up new lights on the outside. And I said, how are things here? And we were laughing and kibitzing like we normally do. How's the family? How are things? And I said, how are things going? um what is there issues that you have with me? Are there any issues going on? And my normal talk with employees as I'm going down there. And one of the guys turned to me and says, it really makes me feel good because most everybody gives a handshake, but me you give a hug to. you know so I just kind of sat back and chuckled and laughed, and it took me a minute to figure out what he was actually saying. And it's like, oh, it dawned on me saying that this makes you feel extra special, and this is something that's genuine. It's not anything that hey, I'm giving you a hug because I want to. It's just who we are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's an inspiration for people to come work for you. Absolutely. So all this stuff you're doing is pretty great, I gotta say. I got one more question, and
Sure.
I'm curious about, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's, looking to operate a business, that maybe is a young person that is just starting in the trade, but they're really like looking to cut their teeth in a management spot, or even ownership spot of the company.
So one of the things that I would turn around and say for me, especially after watching my father and everything else, there's a couple of things. One, you got to have thick skin, okay, and you got to be able to take constructive criticism, and you got to be able to brush it off, and hey, and put your foot down where it needs to be put down on some things, whether it be customers, whether it be employees. And the biggest thing that I also have is communication. Okay, put a team together that you're willing to work with. Don't put a team together just because they have the resume, and if you can't work with them. That's the biggest thing that I told Israel when Israel came to work for me. And I said, okay, we're looking for these positions. He said, what do you want in here? That's my words to him were, you have to work with them every day. You're on the manufacturing side, so part of your communication and your leadership has to be reflected in that. and this is your team. And there's, you're going to have to release the reins a little bit on certain areas, and it's a give and take. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would have to say if you're starting out right now.
Very cool, man. That's awesome. That's great advice. And you, sir, are a leader. And that is, just that you saying that to Israel, just shows him that you're a leader. So that's good. All right. Any last thing you want to say before we go?
No, thanks this is my first podcast. So, I
You did awesome, man. It was perfect.
Greg Sheldon here, your host of Metal, Steel, Manufacturing, and Business Pro podcast, where you learn everything about the metals and manufacturing industry that make your modern day life possible.